Look at the weather.
It's beautiful here.
Non-stop rain.
Oh, man, it is a blazer out there.
It's cold and it's shivery.
It is cold.
Really coming down here.
I really enjoy your weather reports.
From the All Indiana Podcast Network, we're talking weather in a whole new way. From historical events to what's coming up, plus weather news, science, safety, fun facts, and more.
I like where this is going.
This is Weather Weekly. Weather Weekly with Wish TV Storm Track 8 meteorologist Marcus Bailey.
Episode number 38 of Weather Weekly. I'm meteorologist Marcus Bailey. Thanks for joining us here. Shorter podcast, as we typically do at the first of any month. We kind of give a preview of what to expect. And November, typically a busy month. We'll talk more about that. Pretty quick and brief weather headlines here as we're finally kind of flipping the switch to some cooler temperatures across central Indiana. And we'll get to the forecast here at the end of the podcast, but may make our first legit run at near or below freezing overnight lows. I think it's worthwhile noting we're now at 192 consecutive days of temperatures failing to reach the freezing mark or below. Now that puts us at the 75th longest stretch, so it's nothing too considerable. It is a little bit longer than last year. We went 174 days between freezing temperatures. It's not quite as long as 2019 when we went to 212 days between freezing temperatures here in central Indiana. If you were wondering, the record is 254 days. That was back in 1929. We hit our first freeze of the winter season of 29-30 on November 19th. Looks like we may get there here later on this week. We'll talk more about that in the forecast in just a bit. Nationally speaking, I thought this article here on AccuWeather was kind of interesting, that they think that there is some correlation between some very rare warm Pacific Ocean water that may have contributed partially to a near record-setting tornadic October across the lower 48 states. The final number hasn't been completely tallied yet, but it is a little bit close to 100 total across the country. In fact, we even had a few in southern Indiana down along the Ohio River for the month of October, but a lot of them originated in Oklahoma, in Kansas, a couple in Texas, several in Illinois, also several in Minnesota and South Dakota, and even Ohio had several reports of tornadoes as well through the month of October. The record, 123, which still stands, and that was in 2018. Second place is 117, set back in 2001, but it does put us in top 5 category. Not unusual that we get severe weather in the months of October and November, and as you'll see here, our biggest tornado outbreak here in Indiana was actually in November. We can certainly see our fair share of severe weather. People always think of the spring as being kind of the backbone for severe weather season, but really it's in both of the transitional periods, spring and then coming out of summer into fall and winter. So you're getting that transitional period where you can get a lot of severe weather as well. And a lot of reason why we just haven't had that yet is we haven't had the big swings. Now we're starting to kind of flip the switch a little bit, and it may be a little bit too late if you consistently keep the cold and you're not fluctuating between that warm and cold. We have not really seen a whole lot of that. It's been warm, and then it turned chilly kind of in a hurry. So something to watch for here. We'll talk more about kind of the November severe weather statistics coming up here after the break. Again, we are now at the tail end of the hurricane season, and we mentioned it last podcast here. Not much going on. We do have a named system right now, subtropical storm Wanda. It is out in the middle of the Atlantic, no threat to any mainland or islands, and moving north and stays away from anything significant, so no worries there. We have gotten to W. It looks like there is a disturbance with about a 10% chance of a cyclonic formation in the next 48 hours. That is off the coast of Africa. We'll wait and see what ends up happening with that. But it looks like overall the tropics are pretty quiet. Eastern Pacific, nothing brewing there. Nothing in the Central Pacific out by Hawaii as well. So really only Atlantic with a couple of minor systems that pose at this point no threat to any landfall. We will keep you updated as November is the last month for the hurricane season. So we'll keep you updated. All right, we're going to hit the break real quick. Coming up, we're going to look ahead to the month of November and what you can expect and some of the historical things that have happened in the month of November. That's coming up next here on Weather Weekly.
Audible's romance collection has something to satisfy every side of you. When it comes to what kind of romance you're into, you don't have to choose just one. Fancy a dalliance with a duke, or maybe a steamy billionaire. You could find a book boyfriend in the city and another one tearing it up on the hockey field. And if nothing on this earth satisfies, you can always find love in another realm. Discover modern rom-coms from authors like Lily Chu and Ali Hazelwood, the latest romantasy series from Sarah J. Maas and Rebecca Yarros, plus Regency favorites like Bridgerton and Outlander. And of course, all the really steamy stuff. Your first great love story is free when you sign up for a free 30-day trial at audible.com/Wondery. That's audible.com/Wondery.
Episode number 38 is all about the month of November. But before we kind of put the wraps up here for the month of November, as we typically do, we want to kind of look back on October. October, very interesting here in central Indiana. And if you watch Wish TV, we've been kind of hammering this home here for the last couple of days, and that is the amount of precipitation that we just came off of. But in both temperature and in precipitation, kind of historical numbers here. First off, precipitation, we ended up with 7.74 inches of rainfall. That's well over 3 inches above average, and it is good for the fourth most that we've ever picked up for the month of October on record. And only about 1/10 of an inch shy of the next wettest, and that was 1983. So it's been a while since we've had that wet of an October here. And it goes to show, I mean, you look outside, and part of it is temperature-wise as well, but everything is still extremely green. We're starting to see some changeover with the leaves now that the days are getting shorter and temperatures are finally now starting to get cooler. But again, it was a very mild October as well. The average temperature, the mean temperature at 60.9 degrees, that is good for the 11th warmest on record. So on both fronts there, pretty warm. It's the warmest since 2007. That year, 2007, that October was at 62.1 for the average temperature. It was fourth warmest, in case you were wondering. The warmest, 1900, that was at 63.4 degrees for the average temperature. So kind of an exceptional October. So leads into the month of November, and we get a lot going on in the month of November. Later on this month, we will be hopefully chatting with Mike Ryan with the National Weather Service to give his winter weather preview. He is hard at work on that, and usually will give us some dissection of his forecast and what he expects. We've talked a little bit about it. We do know going into this it'll be a La Nina winter. And if I remember correctly, going into La Nina winters, now a lot can change, but usually that means sometimes a later start to the winter. We certainly can see snow as early as October here. And so that does not exclude the month of November, where our average snowfall is just shy of an inch. About 0.8 of an inch of snowfall is our average, based on historical data from 1991 to 2020. Also, our average high at the beginning of the month, around 58 degrees, average low at 40. By the end of the month, our average high is at 46, and the average low below freezing at around 30 degrees. We also average about 3.5 inches of precipitation, just shy of that. The liquid equivalent there, that's factoring in rain and snow. All right, some interesting things here to look at. looking ahead, and these are some of the coming off the Weather Service here, some historical things that have happened. And in November, I know I say this about a lot of months here, but I think November definitely it rings true that you literally can get just about anything in the month of November, from a lot of snow to some pretty significant severe weather as well. Kind of running down, and I'm not going to hit up all of these that the Weather Service has. These are basically this day in history, but some of the more notable events that have happened in all 30 days for the month of November. In 1984, November 1st, severe thunderstorm winds knocked down trees in Tippecanoe and Carroll counties. I think this is interesting. Not that long ago, 2010, on the 2nd, 95% of Indiana was experiencing moderate to extreme drought conditions as of November 2nd, if I remember correctly. Now, I'd have to go look back in the archives here, but if I remember correctly, I believe it may have not been by November, because I think in November, people just kind of give up. But I do think once you got into kind of August, September, maybe even parts of October, I remember watching Wish TV from afar in 2010 and seeing stories of lawn care companies that no longer were getting any business because grass was not growing. Most of the grass was dead and brown. That they were offering to spray paint your yard for a fee, so you could have a little bit of a green look to your lawn. I mean, that was a pretty bad drought. So one of the more significant ones in recent memory. On the other side of that, November 3rd, 1966, in Indianapolis, the record snow depth for the date set at 8 inches. That means that wasn't that they had 8 inches of snow that day, that there was 8 inches of snow on the ground. In 1886, Indianapolis, the record snowfall for the date is set at 4.4 inches of snow. And on the 5th, in 1991, in Indianapolis, the record low temperature for the date was set at 15 degrees. On the 6th, 2005, a large and damaging squall line moved through central Indiana in the early morning hours. Widespread wind damage occurred, including several reports of downed trees and power lines. Let's go on the opposite end of the cold that I was talking about. 1999, on the 8th, Indianapolis, the record high temperature for the date was set at 76 degrees. And in 1921, on the 9th, Indianapolis record snowfall for the day was 3.8 inches of snow. In 1975, on the 10th, Terre Haute, a tornado breaks plate glass windows of several stores and damages several mobile homes. In 1998, on the 10th as well, a line of severe thunderstorms causes tree damage across much of central Indiana, bringing winds to 50 to 70 miles per hour. In 1911, on the 11th, at Bedford, a tornado hits the north side of town at 11 p.m. on 11/11/11 at 11 p.m. You following me there? The worst damage is concentrated at the Bedford Foundry and Machine Company. In 2019, so this was only a couple of years ago, at Indianapolis, 2.8 inches of snow fell, setting a record for the date. If you remember, and we were kind of talking about this the other day, that year was interesting because I want to say leading up to Halloween that year, it was very mild. And then Halloween came around and it was spitting ice and sleet and it got really, really chilly. And then by the morning of the 1st, it was just downright chilly. I believe that there was a record low maximum high, if that makes sense. I think I'm saying that right. And I think it was only in the 20s that day on November 1st. So we had some stretches there of some cold by the 11th of that month, we already had 3 inches of snow or close to it. And that's the daily record for that date. Also, 2019, this is just a couple of days later. Very cold air moves into central Indiana, Indianapolis sets a new record low temperature of 8 degrees and a new record low maximum temperature of 21 degrees. So that was following the snow that we picked up the day before, which was nearly 3 inches. In 1997, on the 13th, a winter storm brings 4 to 6 inches of snowfall in a 50-mile wide swath centered on Interstate 70 between Terre Haute and Indianapolis. That was the 13th and the 14th. In 1993, on the 14th, overnight flash flooding occurred in central and southern Indiana with up to 9 inches of rainfall. 9 inches of rainfall measured. In 2005, in Washington, an EF3 or an F3 at that point, tornado traveled on the ground for 12 miles and up to a quarter mile wide at times. That was on the 15th, so we're getting into the middle of the month. Of course, the 17th, a lot of people remember, and there were a couple of significant events here. In 1993, around 2 inches of rain on November 16th and 17th allowed flash flooding on November 14th, 1993, to turn into widespread major flooding across central and southern Indiana during the third week of November. In 2013, so not that long ago, and we'll spend some time. We'll grab Stephen Deanna, who likes to look at a lot of the historical stuff. We'll spend a podcast on this one here in a couple of weeks as we get closer to the anniversary. November 17th, the largest November tornado outbreak in state history, produced 30 tornadoes, 16 of which were in central Indiana. That wasn't just a big tornado outbreak in Indiana, but really across the Midwest as well. That was November 17th. That was ended up followed by some significant cold air to follow after that tornado outbreak. In 1880, on the 18th in Indianapolis, record low temperature was set at 5 degrees. Also in 1880, the very next day, the low temperature dropped to 3 below. This marks the earliest winter date in city records for the temperature to drop below 0. 1880. That was on the 19th. Let's see, what else? In 1992, on the 22nd, one of the largest November tornado outbreaks in state history produced 15 tornadoes, including one which was on the ground for 12 miles. So these are a couple of outbreaks that are significant here in Indiana. We'll spend more time on those here in a couple of weeks as we get closer. Those were kind of at the tail end or nearing the back third of the month of November. A couple more here for you. In 2001 in Shelbyville, on the 24th, an F1 tornado caused $1 million of damage. And let's see, 1958 on the 28th, Indianapolis record snowfall on the date, 4.6 inches of snow. And on the 30th, 1991, at Danville, early morning thunderstorms on the 30th brought a reported wind gust of 100 miles per hour. There was a lot there to take in. And, you know, it kind of opens the door for a lot of podcasts that we can kind of break these down individually. There's some significant events, specifically the 17th tornado outbreak and the 22nd, 1992. I think those are going to be kind of standalone ones that we'll talk about here. Especially the 2013 one, because that was a significant outbreak that was in more recent memory here. So we'll spend some time on that. But it just goes to show, again, month of November is a crazy month. You can literally go from, you know, severe storms, tornado outbreaks, to maybe just a couple of days later talking about significant chill, maybe even accumulating snow. I'll talk about kind of my personal experience, that 2017 outbreak. Remember cleaning up in Illinois from that tornado outbreak, and that happened on a Sunday, and just that following weekend kind of cleaning things up, and it was snowing on us while we were cleaning up. But we'll talk more about that as we get a little bit closer. We'll look ahead to what will be, it looks like, maybe a chillier open to the month of November. That's coming up in my full forecast right after the break. Stay with us here on Weather Weekly. All right, here's a look at your forecast here for the first week of November, and starting to feel the chill a little bit with a little weak boundary that's going to be surging in here for the early part of the week. It is going to allow for quiet conditions as Canadian high pressure settles in for the remainder of this week. So I've got minimal, if any, rain chances here to speak of for the rest of the week heading into the weekend. But I think what is noteworthy is below average temperatures, both on the high end and low end. We could have several nights here of near or below freezing temperatures. In fact, could have a killing freeze here a couple of nights, which will end the growing season across our area. Looks like highs will only be into the mid, if not upper 40s all the way through Friday. But again, it comes with a lot of sunshine, so some pretty days ahead, just kind of on the crisp side of things. Maybe a little bit of a bounce back for the weekend. Not bad, both Saturday and Sunday with highs in the lower 50s, and may jump into the middle 50s by early next week, as there are some signs that we start to kind of warm things up gradually as we head into the second week of the month. As terms of the long-term pattern here, 6 to 10 day outlook kind of puts us in the near normal range for temperatures and below average in terms of precipitation. 8 to 14 days, which will take us into the middle of the month, slightly above average temperatures, not a significant warm up, and below average precipitation. The 1 month outlook here is revised for the month of November, calling for equal chances of above or below normal temperatures, although the northern parts of the state has a chance of seeing above average temperatures. And it looks like we have an equal chance of going above or below in terms of precipitation as well. So something as we start kind of grinding our way through the first half of November to keep an eye on. Of course, we love to hear your feedback and what you'd like to hear on the podcast as well. You can email me anytime, marcus.bailey@wishtv.com. You can also find me on social media at Marcus Bailey Weather on Facebook, or on Twitter and Instagram. Just search for @Marcus Bailey. While you're here, make sure to check out all the other great podcasts here, all part of the All Indiana Podcast Network. We'll talk to you next week.
Discover more from Storm Track 8 Weather and Wish TV. Online at wishtv.com, and when you follow Wish TV on Facebook. Plus, be sure to check out more great podcasts from the All Indiana Podcast Network now at allindianapodcastnetwork.com.